unfortunately, as was 200 years ago, we are still fighting the crisis of gun violence, so we're going to take a brief moment to remember that, and a couple of our local representatives will also be here to speak. So please join me in a moment of silence. I'm going to now turn it over to Representative Rabb.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm State Representative Chris Rabb. This amazing historic site is in my legislative district, the 200th legislative district of Pennsylvania, and I'm glad to be here. I'm not glad to be talking about gun violence, but it is appropriate to talk about it on this site because we've inherited a nation that is awash in trauma. A country born out of bloody violence. This is a nation born off of stolen land and stolen labor. And violence is part of the origin story of our nation. And it has evolved over centuries, but it has not dissolved. It has gotten worse for many, and it seems intractable. What are we ever going to do? Is this always going to be the case? But I remind you that there were people hundreds of years ago who believed that the institution of slavery would never be removed, could never be overcome. But there were people here, in fact, in Rep. Kinsey's district, I believe, in 1688, the earliest protest against slavery in the world, in Northwest Philadelphia. So there are people for generations who have known that what we call normal and how we try to normalize awful things is not acceptable. And I hope all of us here today are those people who say that even though this happens every day, all across our city, all across this Commonwealth, all across our country, that it is not acceptable. We cannot just allow for this to be the norm. We in fact have to make sure that the norm is abundance, is shared prosperity, is community, it's caring and empathy and concern for our neighbors. That is my takeaway from previous generations who have made our society that much better for us to live in. By no means perfect. But if it took centuries to get to this point, it's not going to happen overnight. Whatever we want to see in the world that is good, that is just, that is kind, it will not happen over a weekend, or a calendar year, or an election season, or a presidential term. It will happen because we make it happen, and every single generation will have to be part of the solution. Every single generation. We are all impacted in different ways. And we are not going to be safe. We are not going to be free until we're all free. And I stand on a historic site where quite probably my ancestors were, fighting the good fight so that we could have greater proximity to the type of society we can all feel safe in and feel fully actuated. That is my hope, that is my dream, and that is my commitment to my service as a legislator. And I'm so glad that I'm here with colleagues of mine who feel similarly, who are deeply concerned about our society, about our neighborhoods, and what community safety can look like. So thank you so much, and I want to turn it over to Representative Stephen Kinsey.
Good afternoon. Representative Rabb really said it all. And you know, for me, as a little kid who grew up not far from here on Sherman Street, right off of Johnson Street, it makes me think about how things have changed since I've been on this earth. But here it is, 3 years from celebrating the 250th anniversary of this country, just 3 years away from celebrating the 250th anniversary of these United States. And Rep. Rabb had mentioned right down at Germantown and Worcester, back in the 1600s, the first published anti-slavery document was published right here, right down the street. We're living in times where we get to treasure the 19 historic sites that are right here in the northwest section of Philadelphia. We get to treasure that. Unfortunately, 247 years ago, it wasn't that way. However, one thing that my father told me was that the only thing constant is change. And the only way that we're going to make change is by us doing it together. As legislators, we can have the greatest idea that we think is going to make Pennsylvania so safe, whether it comes from Senator Haywood, whether it comes from Rep. Rabb, whether it comes from Rep. Kinsey. The ideal of legislation starts with just that, an ideal. It doesn't matter who it comes from, but it's an idea that we now put into putting pen to paper. And then once we put that pen to paper, the reality of it is that we still might think it's the best thing that's going to make our community safer, but it's going to still take the vote of 203 members in the House, 50 members in the Senate to help bring it to fruition. But beyond that, it's going to take folks like you standing up and simply saying, this is good for us, this is good for our community, or saying, this is not the best thing for our community. But the message I want to leave is that we all have to be in this together. You know, some of us grew up at a time where we used to hear this saying, it takes a village. That village can't disappear. The village might change. Some of our ancestors might move on, but it's that next generation that's going to continue that village. It's that next generation that's going to have the ideas to lead us. And I'm talking to you guys directly, because you guys are that next generation. Don't be afraid of it, because it's going to happen. We were all kids at one time in our lives, except for maybe Senator Haywood. He was always an adult. Ever since I met him, he was always an adult. But most of us were kids, and we had these bright ideas, and we thought we were invincible. And then what happened is that we recognized in our society, everybody didn't think like us. Everybody didn't have the same ideas like Kim. But folks had ideas. And the question is, how do we bring those ideas together to work to make our society safer? It's going to take all of us to do that. So I'm just happy to be here to share that message with you. And folks, just know, as elected officials, we are human beings also. We listen to folks. We may not always agree, but we're here to do the work to make our community safer, so that way we don't have to walk into the carriage house and look at the pictures of the souls that were shot, because there's been too many souls that are shot every single day. It's too many. One is one too many. But if we want to make that change, if we want to change our society, if we want to make a difference, let's all work together to do that, and we can do that. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, I'm Art Haywood, your state senator. This Soul Shot exhibit is so powerful. Is anyone here who has not seen it? Raise your hand. Please spend some time in the exhibit. Now, I was part of the first presentation when we had the exhibit years ago. Unfortunately, it's year after year after year, but these stories of individuals, brothers, confidants, cousins, sons, uncles, sisters, brothers, mothers, this exhibit is all to bring to life that we are talking about people not just statistics and numbers, who have lost their lives, who have lost their connection to loved ones who are here. If there's anyone here who has a loved one on the wall, thank you for your courage in allowing the picture to take the pain. Thank you. It takes a lot of courage to put a face. And the last thing I want to say is this. Gun violence is going down in Philadelphia. Gun violence is going down by over 20% in Philadelphia this year. As shootings and homicides. Here in the Northwest, we have organized a number of groups to focus on the highest crime areas. Worcester and Germantown, Chew and Cheltenham. And in these areas, we have organizations that are talking to the shooters and shot to encourage them to change their lives. We have organizations providing food and housing and other services to the neighbors. Representative Kinsey and I, we do a job fair to help bring people out of poverty into opportunity. This is a kind of concentrated effort for individuals who don't want to die, who don't want to be shot, who want a life other than all risk. But we've got to help them see another way to live. So I want you all to take a look at this exhibit. I know we're going to hear much more about it, but also know that there's actions today in this city that are pushing shootings down. And we can make a difference in shootings here in Philadelphia, but we've got to concentrate on the shooters, the shot, and get them into another life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about what the Soul Shot Portrait Project is. It was started, as Senator Haywood said, 7 years ago, sadly. And I remember at that time he said this was a marathon and not a sprint. And it has been a marathon that I'm tired of running. At any rate, I'm an artist and I thought I wanted to do something. I'm not a big marcher, I'm not a politician, and I thought I could use my talent and enlist talents from other artists in Philadelphia, in the area. And how it works is artists volunteer their time and their talent, and they meet with a family or loved one of someone who's been shot and get to know who that person was. And create a portrait from hearing stories, from looking at photographs and videos. And the idea is that we put on these exhibitions of fine artworks depicting these souls. And when people come to see it, and if you haven't, I hope you'll go in to see it, they connect in a different way. It's like every morning I feel like the news is traffic, weather, and shootings. And we get numb to it. So this is a way to connect with these souls. We have some handouts that tell all about the project. We put out beautiful catalogs of all the portraits for every exhibition. And I hope you'll take some time to look, as I said, and look at our website and get involved and come away from this with a promise to yourself to do something, anything that you can, just one thing. And it's changed my life, and I got to meet wonderful people like Kimberly Kamara, who's responsible for getting us here, and her son's portrait is in this exhibition, so I'll let her talk a little bit about that.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Kamara. Unfortunately, but fortunately, I met and connected in some way, shape, or form with all the reps and senators, as well as the community. And I remember years ago, my son had gotten into some trouble, and we had to come to Cliveden house. And they helped us along the way because he guys, it was crazy. But you know, we had to meet here. So when I wrote my children's book, I had my book launch here. And then Laura put out a plea to put up the exhibition. And I'm like, what other place to have this exhibition is at Cliveden? And it's a win-win situation. And like Ian was saying, Laura was saying, her organization helped my family through some very tough times. When I actually first reached out to them with Niam's portrait, I didn't know what to expect. And me and the artist talked back and forth. And I'm just there, not knowing she's taking notes. And when I actually walked into the exhibition where my son's portrait was, all I could do was cry. I cried because of the fact that I'm now one of those mothers who's lost a child to senseless gun violence. My family has to walk this walk. And now this portrait is on a wall. And she took particular notes, like his favorite color was blue. He actually saved 7 people's lives through his death because he was an organ donor. And she placed a crown on his head because he, in fact, was a king for making a selfless act of becoming an organ donor. So even in his death, he still brings me joy. As I tell a story, I want everybody to walk away with, please, kids, if you have kids, grandkids, friends, nieces, nephews, talk to them. Start young and flip their rooms, flip their beds, go in their rooms, see what's going on, have a conversation and actively listen to them, because you don't want to wind up like myself and my family, and it hurts. Each time I have to speak at an event, I just get all sorts of emotions, and I wait till the last minute. I come, but I wait till the last minute because I cry, and it's not a good place to be in. So please take pictures, show your kids these pictures, and get involved before you have to get involved. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you everyone for coming, and thank you to our state representatives and folks from the Shoals Portrait Project. So feel free to come take a look at the exhibit, and thank you all.